Hi guys, welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get you started on your next chapter, which is chapter 6 in our Android programming class using Java. And this chapter is going to be a shorter one, and it's going to focus on, or we're going to discuss, the Android Software Development Kit, the SDK, and compatibility. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So our topics are going to be, we're going to talk a little bit about the different Android SDK versions. We're going to talk about what it means to have a sane minimum. Okay, so the SDK is the collection of libraries and classes and all of those things that you use when you're developing your Android app. Okay, and depending on what version of the SDK that you are using, that's going to determine what features you have available to in your app, and also what Android devices can actually run your app, or at least make use of those features. Okay, we'll see how we can code around some of these compatibility issues here in a second. So we're going to talk a little bit about a sane minimum. Okay, so you're going to be balancing the oldest version of Android that your app will run on versus getting the features that you want. Okay, so the more devices that you want to have run your app, the further back you have to go in terms of what version of Android you're going to be developing for. Okay, so got to talk about that minimum, and then there's going to be 3 different SDK version numbers that we're going to be concerned with: the minimum version, the target version, and the compiled version. So minimum version is, okay, this think about when you were buying video games for a PC, for example, right? And on the box, back in the day, on the box it would say minimum version, minimum requirements. It would say something like Windows 7, or if you're playing on Steam or something, and you look at the minimum requirements, it'll say minimum requirements Windows 8, right? Well, same kind of thing here, okay, or similar anyway. And then you have the target version, target SDK version, and for those same games, it'll say optimized for Windows 10 or optimized for Windows 11, works best with this. Well, that's the same kind of thing, right? We're talking about, the oldest version of Android that we're going to support, and then we're going to talk about, the optimized version, target SDK version, and then the compile SDK version is kind of a number that's in between us and the compiler, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay, and so then we'll look at how we can add code from later APIs safely. So in our app, we might have new features that we want to incorporate. We might want to upgrade our app because the latest version of Android came out, and there's a new cool feature in there, gee whiz, wonder wand feature we want to incorporate. And so we want to upgrade our app, right, to use that feature. Now, for some reason, users out there, they might be stuck on an older version of Android. And if they download your app and you're using a feature that their phone doesn't support, then that could be a problem, right? You might have, your app might crash on their phone, or it might have unexpected behavior or whatever. So we'll look at how we can have code in our app that's designed to run on later versions of Android that can still be safe for older versions of Android, for people's older phones. So that way they may not be able to use the feature that we put in, but it's not going to kill them either, right? So that maybe they just can't use that feature on their phone because their phone's too old, or their version of Android's too old, or something like this. Okay, and then finally we'll take a look at the Android developer documentation. So Android SDK versions. All right, so there's all kinds of different versions of Android, okay? And when you first create a project, you have to specify the minimum software development kit, the minimum SDK. All right, so you can see here in the slide that we've got that drop-down menu. And so what this is saying is, this is the oldest version of Android that we're going to support. Okay, this is the minimum. If you want to use our app, your version of Android must be at least this. Otherwise, you can't download and install it on your phone. Okay, so you can select that, and you can see in these options here, each one of these lines, what that does is that's going to give us a code name, an API level, firmware version, and once you select it, underneath the minimum SDK, there's a little blurb there that says, you know, a percentage of devices, a good guess at the percentage of devices that your app will run with, right? So if you picked like API 21, you know, KitKat, I think API 21 is KitKat, and it'll say something like, oh, your app will run on like 85% or 90% of devices. But if you chose Android 12, that number's gonna get a lot smaller, right? Because there's fewer devices that are running Android 12, right? So, you know, depending on which version you are targeting is going to determine how far you can distribute your app, okay? So code-named releases have incremental builds, so you saw in the slide, or if you get in the drop-down menu, you'll see, right? So you can see there's like 7.11 for Nougat, and then there's 8.0 Oreo, there's 8.1 Oreo, and then 9.0 Pi, etc. Okay, so those are code-named releases, and they have incremental builds. Okay, now later releases of Android drop those code names. Okay, so they don't do that anymore. They just say, they just refer to the later releases as Android 10, Android 11, Android 12, kind of like Windows. Does Windows 8, Windows 9, Windows 10, Windows 11, that kind of thing. Okay, now as I was saying, there's a lot of devices that are going to continue running older versions of Android. Okay, there's reasons for it. They might be working with a particular carrier that is supporting a proprietary feature, right? A feature that only works for, say, Verizon or whatever, or T-Mobile, okay? And so if you have a situation like that where there's a particular version of Android that's maybe been customized or tailored for their network, well, then all the devices that rely on that proprietary feature, that have that proprietary code, are going to have to wait. Right, they're gonna have to wait longer for upgrades if they get an upgrade at all, because you know Google might just say, oh well, we're gonna move to version 13, and we're not supporting whatever feature it is that you have on your network, and tough. So then that might leave one of the carriers, you know, T-Mobile or Verizon or whatever, scrambling to fix their stuff. In which case, everybody that was using their phones is stuck with the older version of Android, right? So they may not be able to upgrade yet. Okay, so in that case, you have a situation where newer version of Android has some newer features, but some people are stuck on an older version of Android, so they can't take advantage of those newer features, you know, that new GWiz Wonder Wand or that new text box or whatever. Okay, so compatibility in Android programming. Okay, compatibility can be an issue for, you know, that's one scenario that I described, explaining that. Okay, so if you want to have your app run on, you know, you want to have the biggest audience possible, then you need to have the ability to have your code, or you have to write your app so that it can run on recent Android releases and all kinds of different types of hardware. Okay, so this can be difficult, but not as difficult as it may seem. Android, the layout system, you know, the UI and everything, it adapts pretty well for phones. Okay, now tablets are a bit tougher. It's not as robust, but there are ways around that, which are covered in chapter 17. Okay, and Android TV and wearable devices, even tougher still. Okay, so phones seem to be the easiest for dealing with this. All right, so you have API versus release numbers. Okay, you have API numbers, you have release numbers. So if we go back, and I will do that. Let's go back really quick. So you can see here where it says API 25, Android 7.1.1. Okay, so you've got two different numbers there. Okay, so what you have is you've got an API number and you've got a release number. So the API numbers, there's two numbers that can be confusing. What's the difference? The API numbers are usually used by the developer. Okay, so those refer to versions of the software development kit. Those are visible to the developers. That's what developers tend to focus on. Okay, and the release numbers are for the users. Okay, so you know it's less technical, you know, to say, oh well, this is Android 12. Okay, and you know all of the literature would say in Android 12, here's these new features. Isn't this awesome, right? And so then that's all stuff that users are interested in. And then for Android 12, the API number might be, I don't know, 30. I'd have to go look it up exactly what it is. It's bigger than that, but it's more technical information, right? In API 30, look at this paper, and here's all the different things you can do, and the different ways the methods have changed. Here's all the names of the methods and stuff. That's for developers, the names of the classes. Users don't care about that. So it's kind of, one's for developers, one's for users. Okay, so a sane minimum. Okay, now when you upgrade, when you move from different versions of Android, right, you can have different, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, right? So when you have an incremental release, when you go up like from 7.1 to 7.1.1, okay, or you go from, you make a small little jump, okay, usually it's not that big a deal. You have, maybe changes within a class that are hidden from you, the developer, right? They're done in the library, so your method call stays the same, but maybe they changed, something to optimize a method, how it works, or something like that. It's trivial as to what you have to do to deal with it, but major revisions can be a pain. So going from say 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, right? Or if you are just going to support 7, if your app is only going to run on Android 7.x or whatever, okay, you can work with that. Going from 7.0 to 7.1, not a big deal. But if you're trying to support 4, 5, 6 major releases all at once, Android 4, 5, 6, and 7, say, all at the same time, 8, 9, 10, 12, obviously that gets more complex. Okay, and so we're going to find out, or we're going to see a little bit later, that there's libraries that are available to make that a bit easier. But without those libraries, well, even with those libraries, that's going to require you going through and examining the differences between the different release versions and adding code that are tailored to those different release versions. If a particular user is has version 6 on their phone, right, and you want to support 4, 5, 6, and 7, well, you're going to have to know what version that they are running. You're going to have to programmatically determine that, and then provide code that executes contingent upon the particular version, because in version 6 there's going to be features that version 5 doesn't have. Okay, so if somebody's running version 5, you can't be using those version 6 features. Okay, so it can get, the description sounds painful, right? So you can imagine what it's like trying to maintain or trying to have an app that supports multiple major releases. So you're balancing that level of complexity against having the widest audience possible for your app. Because I mean, if it was possible for you to support every single version of Android, right, then you would have the widest distribution channel possible, right? Because anybody anywhere could run your app no matter what, as you intended it to, which would be awesome. But the thing is, then you have to make sure that whenever a new version of Android comes out, or if you make one change in the logic, say for version 4, that it doesn't break things up for version 5, and so on. It gets to be a headache. Okay, so when we made GeoQuiz, what did we do? Okay, in the wizard, we set that minimum SDK to 11.0. So it was API 30. API 30. I think I guessed a minute or two ago I said API 12. I think it's 30, right? I was pretty close. But now you can see your app will run on approximately 40.5% of devices. Okay, so the more recent the SDK version that you set as the minimum, the fewer devices that you're going to be able to run on. Okay, so we can set the minimum target in build versions. Okay, and where are these properties found? So they are found, those values, all right, so you could say minimum API 18, the target 26, okay, and then when you finally build your app, then the build version will get set, okay. What version of the API did you get when you actually built the thing? So in build.gradle is where these values are listed, okay, and the minimum SDK and the target SDK are set there, and those get used to overwrite values in Android manifest, in the Android manifest. So in the build Gradle, so if you are in Android view, you go down to Gradle scripts and then double click on build Gradle, the module version, the second one here. You open it up and you should see something that looks like this, right? So you can see there's your compile SDK. So it's API 32. Your minimum SDK, right? That is the oldest version of Android that you'll support. That's API 30. and then your target SDK. And that is, where you're saying this is the best version, right? This is the best version of Android for your best experience for this app. Make sure that you're running version 32. Okay. So minimum SDK version sets a hard floor. As I was saying at the very beginning, you can't install the app on your phone if your version is lower than that, if your phone's version is lower than that. Okay, so you can only, if you set it to API version 28, that app will only be installable on Android systems, phones, wearables, tablets, whatever, that are running version 28 or higher. Okay, so picking that value, that is what controls or has the biggest impact on the percentage of devices that will be able to run your app. Target tells you, the Target SDK version is telling Android, hey, this is what we designed the app to run on. As I was saying, best if used on this version of Android. Okay, and that usually is the latest Android release, but it depends on what you're trying to do. And you might, lower it, right? Because more recent Android releases might hurt the appearance or the performance of your app, right? So API version 40 comes out and you're like, no, that's not our target. The best experience is still API 38. Okay, I mean, that could be a thing, but usually what you would do is you would upgrade your app to deal with being the best experience on 40. But remember, there's reasons why sometimes you can't do that or it's delayed. Okay, so this might be one of the reasons why you make sure that your target is lower than the release. Okay, and that causes the changes in later Android releases to be ignored. Okay, and so the compile SDK, that's info between you and the compiler, as I was saying before, right? That's just a value that says, oh yeah, it was compiled at this number. Okay, so build target, okay, that's the compile SDK version. That is specifying the version of the SDK to use when building code, and therefore which features are going to be available, right? Because all of the features, and I've said this before in this video, all of the features that you have that you can incorporate into your app are going to be available. They're access to the SDK through different classes and methods in the SDK. Okay, so that build target is going to tell you which version of the SDK to use, and therefore which features you can actually have in your app. Okay, so if you want to use later releases and you want to get the latest features, then set your build target to the latest version. Okay, so if you make adjustments to that, right, if you want to upgrade from, say, API 28 to 30, then you're going to need to go into build.gradle and you can edit those values. You can just type it, save it, where it says, let's go back here, where it says min SDK 30. Edit that, change it to 26, or target SDK, change it from 32 to 34, whatever you want to, whatever the latest version is that you want to upgrade to. Okay, and then from there you have to do a brand new clean build. So how do you do that? Okay, you select file and then go down here and select sync project with Gradle files. Okay, and then that'll set you up. Okay, so how can you, if your minimum SDK, right, the oldest Android device is API 20, okay, but there's a feature in API 28 that you want to add, but you don't want to mess with the people who are still running on API 20, right? So it could be that there's that super cool feature in API 28, but if somebody running API 20 executes that feature, it'll crash them, and you want to make sure that that doesn't happen, right? You want to make sure that people using more recent versions of Android can use your cool feature that you want to implement, but you want to make sure that you don't kill people who can't use that feature because they're still on older versions of Android. How do you do that? Okay, so GeoQuiz has a gap between that minimum SDK and the build SDK. So the problem with that, as I just described in the context of GeoQuiz here, is that if you have code that you call, right, in your app from an SDK that's came out after Android 12, and you try to run it on an Android 12 device, that can cause a crash. Now there's this tool called Android Lint, okay, and that scans your code looking for different problems or potential problems or things that could be problematic, okay, and Android Lint has had several improvements that allow older or newer code to be executed on older devices that would have caused problems to be caught at compile time. Okay, so how are we going to get around this? What does this mean? Well, I'm going to show you. Okay, so what we'll do is, to be able to see this easier, we'll temporarily back rev GeoQuiz. Okay, so we can see how to add this new code, this unsupported code, safely, so it doesn't mess up any older users. Okay, any users of older devices, of older versions of Android. So go into the build Gradle and change the minimum SDK to 19, okay, which is Android 4.4 KitKat, and then we'll set the target SDK to 29. Then once we do this, do the sync thing. So you can see build Gradle got changed to SDK 19, target SDK 29, and then we sync the project, as we were just saying a second ago. So when we do that, we're rebuilding it so that way it's built using API 29, but devices running Android with API 19 can still run it. Now there's features that came out after 19, between 19 and 29, that 19 can't run, right? So there might be something in version 28, okay, that can't run on 19. Okay, and so we're going to see what that looks like. So we'll add some code to GeoQuiz. That's from that later version. We'll see what that looks like. So we're going to put this inside of cheatactivity.java, and that code adds a little animated circle. Okay, when you hide the button goes away, and there's a little circle that pops up. You'll see it when you run it. Now, we need to put that in the onClick listener method for that show answer button, because that's the button that we're going to be working with here with the animation. Okay, so here's the code. Okay, so right here, so animator anim equals view animation utils, and I won't go into too much detail for this code, what it does and all these sorts of things, because this code is just here for the purposes of showing you this is a later feature, blah blah blah. Matter of fact, this is the last time we're going to look at GeoQuiz at all in this chapter, so you can even delete this later. But once you put all this code in, you'll see that there's a little red squiggle here. Okay, and that's Android Lint letting us know that we've got a problem. Okay, so when you see that, okay, the problem is that, here's a little description of what those things do, what the circle does and all that code if you're interested. Okay, what happens is that Android Lint is telling us this is a problem, because this class view animation utils, okay, that came out in API 21. But remember, our minimum API that we set was 19. So that means that there's devices that could be trying to run our app that are API 19, and this code right here, API 21. So the Android version API 19 doesn't know what the heck to do with this. It's like, I don't even know what this is. Okay, now the compiler itself, no problem, right? Because we set the build target to API 29, okay? But Android Lint is the one who comes along and says, no, wait a minute, the minimum is API 19 here. You've got this spread. This could be a problem. So it's going to detect, an error message is going to come up as a result of this situation being detected. And so, you'll get this error message where it says, call requires API level 21, and the current minimum is 19. Okay, so, and it even specifies what the call is, right? It's due to that view animation utils class. So, how do we fix it? Okay, so the easiest thing, raise the minimum SDK to 21. Okay, of course, then you're leaving out in the cold the people who are running SDK 19 and 20, versions 19 and 20 of Android. Maybe that's okay, but if you need those users to still be able to run your app, then this isn't this isn't going to work. So what's the fix? Okay, the easiest thing to do is probably just to raise the minimum SDK to 21. But if you do that, then people who are running Android versions, 19 and 20 can't run your app anymore. So what's the alternative? We can wrap that higher API code in an if statement. Okay, and we'll use that if statement to check the versioning. And if they are running a late enough version of Android, then they can run this feature. Then this feature will work. Then they'll see the little spinny circle. Otherwise, they won't. If they're on 19 or 20 still, then they won't see that. That code just won't execute for them. No problem. So here's what the wrapped up code looks like. Okay, so you can see on line 45, if build.version.sdk_int is greater than or equal to build.versioncodes.lollipop. Okay, so lollipop was version 21, API 21. Okay, so if the current installed version, if the version of Android on the device is greater than or equal to API 21, where this feature exists, do it. Do all of it. Go ahead. Otherwise, skip that animation. Otherwise, you're not going to see that animation. It's that simple. You just have a simple old if statement here that checks the version numbers. That's all. Okay. Okay. So, this is a constant, build.version.sdk_int. That's the the constant that has the device that the app's running on. That's how you retrieve its current version. Okay, so that gets compared against the content for the Lollipop releases. I was just saying, API level 21. So if you want to see the version codes, all the different version codes, I provided a link. You can go in there and check that out and click on that and it'll take you to the page. So the bottom line is that animation code will only get called, it will only execute on those devices that have a version of Android that is API 21 or higher. And if that's the case, then it's going to run fine. But even if the device has the older version of Android, 1920, Lint's going to shut up. It's not going to complain because we wrapped up that code, that potentially problematic code inside that if statement. Okay, so then Lint will say, oh, okay, fine, then you can still run on 19 and 20. It's no problem because this call that's only available in 21 or later will never execute on the older versions of Android. Okay. All right. So once you've tested it and you're fine, that you're convinced that it works and everything, then you can go back in and reset the API levels to where they were before we did this little experiment. Or you can just toss it because this is the last time we're going to play with, or leave it, or whatever you want to do, because this is the last time we're going to play with GeoQuiz. Okay, so using the Android developer documentation. Okay, so it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're programming in C++, you're programming in Java, you're programming Python, Android, it doesn't matter. It's always a good idea to be aware of the developer documentation, right? Documenting the different classes, the different functions, the best practices, different guides for things, for how you should lay out UI, all that kind of stuff. So the main page for Android, their documentation is found at developer.android.com, strangely enough. And here's some sections of interest. You can just go there and click on stuff and take a look around and see what's available. Okay, so here's one section, build your first app. There's a section there for sample code, API reference. So everything that is available in a particular API version, all the different classes and things, and the methods and what their parameter lists are, and all that sort of thing, and descriptions is available. Guidelines for design. Okay, access to training courses, different tutorials. Okay, design guides. Okay, and there's additional documentation here, including the Google Play console, which I highlighted here because you need to know how to get your, or if you're interested in publishing, if you want to publish your app actually on the Play Store, then under this link gives you the information for that. Okay, so that's everything that I've got for you in this video. And you know, what did we talk about? We're just talking about the different SDK versions and compatibility issues, and what happens if, you know, you're trying to run a version of Android with features that, you know, the user's device doesn't support. How can you get around that? You know, if you want to have as wide an audience as possible and, you know, utilize features from a later version, but you still want people on phones with earlier versions to still be able to run your app. I mean, what do you do? Well, we looked at a quick fix for that. You know, just wrap the code up in a conditional statement, check the different API numbers, and you can deal with it. Okay, so that's everything that I've got for you this time. This is going to be, we're saying goodbye to GeoQuiz. This was the last chapter that we've worked with GeoQuiz, so GeoQuiz is done. And in chapter 7, we're going to start a new app called Criminal Intent, which is going to allow us to further explore the UI, as well as different features of your phone. Like we're going to learn how to take pictures, for example. We're going to learn how to, you know, send emails and things. So we're going to learn some really cool stuff with Criminal Intent, and we're going to build something quite a bit more sophisticated than what GeoQuiz was. Okay. All right. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.